Hello, sir. Welcome to our presentation. Today we'll be explaining how gas aviation actually impacts the CO2 levels by Takrim Chima and myself. Let's begin. Now, over the past few decades, there have been a multitude of innovations, such as electric cars, and that obviously reduces pollution. But even with all these innovations, the CO2 levels still seem to either rise consistently or to just stay the same. It never goes down. Now, air travel and its fuels also have an issue. That is, it is one of the greatest CO2 emissions producers, both in Canada and globally. Now, here we would explain the correlation and full understanding of how gas aviation actually impacts CO2. We conclude a viable result and make sense of all variables throughout the process. By the end, we should have learned some basic facts about gas aviation and its correspondence with CO2 emissions, and realize the truth behind how CO2 is caused and which sources play a part in causing such emissions, and truly solving the main question, which is, does gas aviation have a direct impact to CO2 emissions? Let's get into it. So regarding our hypothesis, my partner and I had a mutual agreement that gas aviation is strongly correlated with CO2 emissions. However, we believed this until the year of 2020 because due to COVID-19 lockdown, we had to reduce the spread of the virus. People and governments were ordered to limit their social interactions with others in order to protect each other. Now that our theory is said and done, let's begin into the analysis.
Now let's move on to the analysis. What are the variables impacting this result? There are many variables that impact this result. Variables such as tech, alternative fuel options, and COVID-19. These variables can either increase or reduce the CO2 emissions. For example, COVID-19 is decreasing gas evasion, but is increasing Wi-Fi use. This decreases the amount that airplanes contribute to CO2 emissions, but it increases the amount Wi-Fi contributes to CO2 emissions. Explanation for graph. This graph is an example of air carriers such as airplanes and shows the cost and the consumption over the past 8 years or so. From here, it is clear that although consumption is increased year in and year out, the cost has been fairly inconsistent. This makes sense because the two main types of gasoline used are jet fuel being worth $1.71 USD per gallon as the standard price, while AV gas is worth $4.59 USD per gallon. So an increase of jet fuel in the recent years has been evident.